The Satan incarnate. Incomprehensible forces were compressed into the living metal of the false bodies which the Necron had forged as the full power of the Satan found form. As the Satan became ever more manifest with the focusing of their consciousness, they began to appreciate the subtleties and pleasures of both matter and life. The close weaves of dancing particles enthralled them, and the deliciously focused trickles of electromagnetism leaked by the mortal bodies of the Necron about them awoke a hunger in the Satan quite unlike one they had sated among the raging torrents of stars. The Necron fell into awe of their discovery, and the Satan quickly took control. The powers of the Satan were indeed those of gods, and it was not long before the Satan became truly worshipped as such. Perhaps they were tainted by the material world they had entered, or perhaps their manifestations were true to the sun-bound existence they had enjoyed before. But they were as cruel as the stars that bore them. They revelled in the adulation and Epicurean delights of uncounted mortal slaves. Armed with weapons of godlike power and ships that could cross the galaxy in the blink of an eye, the Necron stood ready to begin their war anew. But the Satan had another boon to grant their subjects. They offered the Necron a path to the immortality and stability their race had always craved. Their cursed flesh would be replaced with living metal, an imitation of their gods. Their discarded husks would be consumed, and their cold metal forms would be free to pursue their vengeance against the Old Ones and an uncaring universe, freed forever of the weaknesses of their mortified flesh. Whether the Necron were truly realized, the price they would pay for accepting the pact with the Satan will never be known. But their race was utterly purged, becoming instead the Necrons and cursing themselves to eternal servitude of the star-born gods. The Satan feasted upon the entire race, leaving behind only ghostly echoes of the Necron. Only a few of the very strongest retained their intellect, and even they were shadows of their former selves. The Necrons cared not. They would live forever as their gods had promised. Only one thing truly remained of their race: a burning hatred of the living. Legions of undying metal warriors set forth in their tomb ships, and the galaxy burned. The Old One's mastery of the warp was now countered by the Satan's utter supremacy in the material universe, and the enemies of the Necrons suffered greatly in the slaughter which followed. The Satan now dominated the galaxy. The last bastions of the Old Ones were besieged, and the races they had nurtured became cattle for the obscene hunger of the Satan. To the young races, the Necrons and their gods were cruel masters, callously harvesting their populations at will, figures of terror who demanded their adoration and fear in equal magnitude. For reasons that will probably never be known, the Satan began to battle amongst themselves for sport and spite as they unleashed destructive forces beyond comprehension. Planets were razed, suns extinguished, and whole systems devoured by black holes. New cities were built by the toil of the millions and then smashed down again. As the harvests grew thin, Satan eventually devoured Satan, until only a few were left, and they sported amongst themselves for an age. Eventually, the Old Ones, legendary for their patience and implacability, became desperate. They manipulated life into new forms with an ever stronger link to the warp, desiring minions with the capability of channeling psychic power to defend themselves. They nurtured many potential warrior races, and there is speculation that these included the earliest Eldar, the Rashan and the Knib, and many others. Millennia passed as their creations bore fruit. The C'tan extinguished yet more life from the galaxy. The hot-blooded young races spread across the galaxy, battling Necron science with warp-spawned magics. The C'tan's empire of destruction was sent reeling. The forces of the Imperium were an anathema to them, and for all the hellish destruction they unleashed, they could not stay the Old One's relentless advance. The C'tan, unified for the first time in millions of years, turned to finding a way of quelling the soul-fueled energies of the young races. They instigated a great warding, a plan to forever defeat the magics of the Old Ones by sealing off the material universe from the Imperium. With their godlike power, it was only a matter of time until they succeeded, and the greatest work of the C'tan was begun. But before this was complete, the seeds of destruction the Old Ones had planted millennia before brought about an unforeseen cataclysm. The growing pains of the young races threw the untapped energies of the warp into disorder. War, pain, and destruction were mirrored in the bottomless depths of the Sea of Souls. The maelstrom of spirits unleashed in the carnage of the coalesced into the previously formless energies of the warp. Older warp entities became terrifying predators, rending at the souls of the vulnerable psychers as their environment was torn asunder and reforged by the energies called forth for warring in the material universe. The denizens of the warp clustered voraciously at the cracks between dimensions, seeking ways into the material world. The Old Ones brought forth newer creations to defend their last strongholds, like the hardy, green-skinned Krork and their technology mimicking Jokero. But it was already too late. The Old Ones' intergalactic network was breached and lost to them, their greatest works and places of power overrun by the horrors of their own creations had unleashed. Most proficient of these horrors were the enslavers, beings whose ability to dominate the young races and create their own portals with transmuted psychers brought them forth in ever greater numbers. For the Old Ones, this was the final disaster, as the enslavers took control of their minions. The Pandora's box unleashed by the young races finally scattered the last of the Old Ones and broke their power forever. Life had stood at the edge of the precipice during the war between the Old Ones and the C'tan. Now, as the enslavers breached the Immaterium in epidemic proportions, the survivors looked doomed. The Necrons had been vindicated in their pursuit of cold science, an undoubted pleasure of seeing the Old One's civilization collapse. Unfortunately, it had appeared that the last of their master's cattle would be lost with it. The C'tan, however, had a solution in keeping with their measureless perception of time. They would allow the enslavers to take what was left and let the galaxy become a wasteland. The Psyker Swarm would die away, and in time the galaxy would throw up new life for the C'tan to consume. It may take millions of years, but the most important thing was to ensure that they would be there to see it. The C'tan chose to escape the great catastrophe that they could sense coming by descending into the Necron stasis tombs, which would be sealed for millions of years. Their machine slaves and Necron warriors would guard them while they slept on worlds purged of all life to keep the enslavers from their door. Only when they were disturbed by a sentient race with the correct characteristics and mastered... No! The Necrons had been vindicated in their pursuit of cold science and the undoubted pleasure of seeing the Old One's civilization collapse. Unfortunately, it had appeared that the last of their master's cattle would be lost with it. The Satan, however, had a solution in keeping with their measureless perception of time. They would allow the enslavers to take what was left of it and let the galaxy become a wasteland. The Psyker swarm would die away, and in time, the galaxy would throw up new life for the Satan to consume. It may take millions of years, but the most important thing was to ensure that they would be there to see it. The Satan chose to escape the great catastrophe that they could sense coming by descending into the Necron stasis tombs, which would be sealed for millions of years. The machine slaves and Necron warriors would guard them while they slept. On worlds purged of all life to keep the enslavers from their door. Only when they were disturbed by a sentient race with the correct characteristics to be mastered and consumed would their star vampires emerge. Just 2 of the Satan have emerged from their tombs to plague the galaxy thus far. They have found a new and unexpected age of civilization and war. The galaxy is blossoming with life, but still overrun with latent psychers and worshippers of the infernal warp energies unleashed by the war with the old ones. It will take time and many great machinations for the Satan to regain their rightful place as rulers of the galaxy. The agents of chaos must be overthrown, the Eldar eliminated, the great work completed, and humanity subjugated before the harvests can truly begin anew. But the Satan and their Necron slaves are ageless. Their science is still unparalleled. Time is on their side.